funding with Playboy came about partly because of my relationship with Ralph Nader and his people. When Nader first came to town, he had four young lawyers that would come every summer. They were called Nader's Raiders at the time, and they would all live in some cheap housing here in town, and they would work long hours, and they were Ralph's assistants. You know, that whenever Ralph would identify something that needed to be done, these young eager beaver lawyers would get to work doing it. Well, I knew the person who ran that program. His name was Ted Jacobs. And I became social friends with the first two groups of Nader's Raiders, in particular those first 2 years. And frankly, all of them smoked marijuana. Ralph didn't, but all of his young, eager young lawyers did. So on the weekends, on most weekends, I would get together either at my house or one of their houses, and we would smoke marijuana and listen to good music and talk about public interest law, all the things that young, idealistic people do. At one of those sessions, one of his young lawyers named John Esposito said to me, "Keith, have you checked with the Playboy Foundation?" And we were in the process at that point of sending funding proposals out to any foundation we could identify where we thought it might be possible that they would give us some funding. And frankly, the first 8 or 10 we sent out, I didn't get anything back but standard rejection letters. I hadn't even been allowed to come in and interview personally. So clearly it was still considered by most foundations too hot to handle. But when Esposito recommended I contact the Playboy Foundation, I thought, you know, no harm in trying. So I did. I sent an application in, and before too long had a phone call back saying that they were interested. They'd like to hear more about the project. They sent someone out from the foundation and spent a day or two with me here in Washington when I was still working out of the basement of my home. He went back and reported on where we were, and apparently it was favorable enough that the next thing I was invited to fly out to Chicago and meet with Hefner and the board of directors. It was, you know, it was kind of a historic moment for NORML because Hefner almost immediately embraced the idea, and certainly, although he was technically just chairman of the foundation board, you can imagine, since he owned 90% of the stock of the company that funded the foundation, he basically could do pretty much what he wanted. Hefner had been someone who used to have been an alcohol drinker, but had given up alcohol some time ago and had become a marijuana smoker. And so he had a personal interest in the issue, understood that it should be legal. It was better for people than alcohol. So pretty quickly after that first meeting, Playboy offered us a $5,000 grant. That was the first offer. I was so discouraged when I first got that word that I actually considered for a short time not accepting their money, because I had just been hired at my first job after the Product Safety Commission. It was my fallback in case I couldn't get funding for NORML. And I wasn't quite sure I wanted to pass up this job opportunity for what was a $5,000 grant, and after the first couple of months we would have used that money up, and I wasn't sure there'd be any other money to follow. But the more I thought about it, I realized, you know, this is either something that I believed in and wanted to take a risk with, or it wasn't. And the fact that someone was willing to put up some money suggested that maybe it was a risk worth taking. So I accepted their grant. I passed up the chance to take a traditional job and never looked back.